Paul Rodgers is the embodiment of an unspoken truth. As the man who guided Free, Bad Company, and Queen, he is revered as one of the finest voices in rock history. A darker truth, however, lurked concealed behind the glitz. Not rivals or casual disagreements, but well-known bands were what he hated. Rodgers saw them as betrayers who had betrayed rock music. Now that he's 75 years old, he's naming them. More surprising than you could have imagined is the truth. Okay, Fleetwood Mac, let's get started. Paul Rodgers' wrath was most stoked by Fleetwood Mac of all the bands he clashed with. This was no informal disapproval. A long-simmering resentment and emotional scar, it was his Achilles heel. Admiration was the starting point. Peter Green, a guitarist whom Rodgers held in the highest esteem, established Fleetwood Mac in the late 1960s, and the band became a beacon of British blues. At the time, Rodgers considered them friends in the fight to keep rock's raw, emotional core alive. Midway through the 1970s, though, that awe turned into wrath. When Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined Fleetwood Mac, the band shifted gears from its rough blues roots to a glamorous California pop sound. Most people thought it was brilliant when Rumors started flying in 1977, and it sold over 40 million copies throughout the world. As far as Rodgers was concerned, that constituted treason. The polished choruses and chart success weren't the only things that infuriated him. It was the band's performance, acting as though their blues past didn't exist. After that, his disillusionment blossomed into outright animosity. He started slamming them in one-on-one chats, saying that their new music was just the blues repackaged as pop gold. Colleagues remember Rodgers literally turning his back as Fleetwood Mac were introduced at a 1977 industry event, spitting that the band's music had become just cocktail party background noise. Those were the remarks of a man who was certain that Fleetwood Mac had forsaken their heritage, sold their soul, and humiliated it by calling their betrayal development. A climate of open animosity had developed by the early 1980s. Rather than merely evading them, Rodgers was outright rejecting their legitimacy. He told his buddies he would politely decline an invitation to perform at a prestigious charity event that also featured Fleetwood Mac. Never perform on stage with a group that trampled blues in pursuit of financial gain. The carvings were protests memorialized in stone. Rodgers, in contrast to many performers who soften with age, became more aggressive and combative. He hated everything about it now. He no longer considered Fleetwood Mac to be fellow musicians. They gave up and ran. While he was around, Fleetwood Mac never once caved to his criticism. McFleetwood justified their innovation by saying it was a necessary next step. Rodgers' anger was fueled by that lack of interest. The act of experimenting did not enrage him. Even he had changed from being Free to being Bad Company. But he thought Fleetwood Mac had sinned when they put their commercial fame ahead of their cultural heritage.